There is a terror and a miracle in the way that fine particles of water can rob an entire range of hills from the horizon. The world becomes a blank page, grey-tinged. The wheat fields, the pines, are gone. Only the ankles of long grass rising from the mud and a disorienting kind of silence. Grey is the colour I did not choose. I don't want to remember it when I think of home. Give me green, its infinite shades, the colour that the light receptors of our eyes are most primed for. I don't want to talk about grey.
Every word is like an unnecessary stain on silence and nothingness.
My old writing professor told me I was too hesitant in my beginnings, but you could say that grey is the colour of hesitation. The encroaching fog bank, moving haltingly. I am not impervious to it, even watching it from afar, separated by a pane of glass, insulated walls. Weather is emotional. It affects the body, the pale chasm in my chest, the wrought iron ache of fatigue. In the mouth of fog, I am always doubtful of change, of shivlight ever breaking through cloud. The most searched questions in the UK, beginning with the words "why am I?" are: why am I so tired? Why am I always tired? Why am I always cold? Our most immediate questions about ourselves, about the whys of our existence, are bound up in weariness, the ice of our bodies. When you and I were together, we talked about our favourite weather. You told me it was mist and I couldn't understand you. Why choose a weather so common in Scotland? And so dreich, the one that turns the paths to muck. In C.S. Lewis's imagining of hell, it was a grey town.
Always in the rain, always in the evening twilight.
I asked my friends, what does grey mean to you?
Represents both emptiness and fullness at the same time.
When we were young, we wanted to die.
When me and my family go to Northern Ireland, I feel strangely carsick by the end of the week. The sky feels like a perpetual panel of office tiles pent above my head. I told my dad I couldn't live here, it feels as if there's a ceiling over your head. He replied, yes, that's exactly how it feels, meaning more than just the weather, the way the country made him feel, as if there were no possibilities, no space to grow. It made him stoop.
Grey is prison walls, concrete in every sense. It soaks away everything about you and your surroundings. It's a vacuum, it makes you invisible.
Grey is airport bathroom cubicles that I have vomited in, the imaginary metal hammer pressing into my migraine-suffering skull, partially melted snow mixed with road grit. It's the colour of ageing, the strands my mum is ashamed of, the shade we women must pluck out of our heads or die altogether, removing all signs of time on our bodies. I wish the world would revise itself, that I could revise the world, but do I ever think that life could alter me? I examine the scenery around me, living from the position of the viewer. Life, please intersect me. Grey, the colour of dissatisfaction.
When I was young, it was dark clouds in the sky, or boring suits. A grey day, a typical British overcast day, or a kind of depressing numbness.
During lockdown, you and I walked the quiet streets in Edinburgh. I don't remember much of what we talked about. What I do remember is that we both really needed the loo, and there were no cafes open. We kept walking, hoping for something miraculous, some public toilet placed by God. Then we came across the children's hospital and found guest toilets inside. I remember I couldn't look around me. Ice was swimming through my body, a visceral fear rematerializing from childhood. I could only look at the floor, linoleum, pale grey with blue dots. I can't think about it. Your childhood friend, the colour of pallid skin, leukemia.
Last night, as if death had lit a pale light in your flesh was cold to my touch. Or not cold, but cool. cooling, as if the last traces of warmth were still fading in you. My thigh burned in cold fear where yours touched it.
Wherever I go, I carry an unengraved gravestone in my backpack. Grey, the colour of dread, a colour to be watched keenly.
So on we marched. That awful loneliness received our souls as air receives the smoke. Then larger breath we drew, felt years gone by, and in a new dimension turned and spoke.
When I moved to New York City, I found myself painting in murky shades. It made me think of Edinburgh when those colours cloaked a day. Sentimental for a Scotland dreich and bruised and longing. Longing for you? No, I was past that then. Just longing to be somewhere where I was known. Where I know.
Grey sea, grey sky. And it makes all the sand look orange. And the seaweed look like a sort of green that's something from the Coraline film.
I reply that I love this, how grey changes the colours in its proximity. And I realise that I have been changed by time, by moving, by you, and grey has changed for me. I look at the fog differently because you told me why you loved it, the way it heightened the drama of the Scottish landscape, gave it more dimension. The first day of rain since moving to New York City, I stepped outside into the drizzle and was suddenly seized by the same sensation I get with my head on my mother's shoulder. Arrested by an inarticulable feeling, a feeling of home brought by the rain. A feeling close to the way when halfway across the world someone says they've been to your hometown, and it feels as if they know a family member. I love how Nan Shepherd, writing about the colours of D-side, dwells not on the obvious things like purple heather and golden wind, but instead takes a moment to address the colour grey, the shade emphasised by some to demean our land, staining it as dismal or dull.
When I hear strangers call our country grey, I do not necessarily contradict. Our grey land, our grey skies hold poised within them 1,000 shades of colour. The eye finds them with delight, and finds them best not in the bright sunshine, which makes colour shallow, but in the cool, clear grey that is yet not cold enough to harden them.
It makes me think of the shallow blue that becomes grey in the evening, that is the prime backdrop for nacreous clouds, the ones that we saw in Fife last December, like spilt diesel in the sky, also known as mother of pearl clouds.
But now I love rain, so I like dark grey clouds, and there's still a sense of boredom in it, but it's a nostalgic boredom. And actually, when you look around, there's lots of grey. Like when the sun hits on the sea, it turns a silvery grey where the light isn't hitting, because it's like a shadow now. A shadow in the sun. It's all of these things, and I'm indecisive.
Me too, Laura. My friend Kevin told me he feels like throwing a party every grey hair he finds on his head, because he never expected to live past 20. He came close to dying of Crohn's, and now every silver strand feels like a triumph. Grey, the colour of survival. A colour containing all other colours. The burn of red on Kevin's cheeks as he laughs. The orange of his vintage cable knit sweater. The first blue sky of the new year.
But I forced to mind my vision of a sky. We saw its grey was not grey, but a milky white, in which radiant traces of opal greens, fiery blues, gleamed, faded, gleamed again, and how only then, seeing the colour in the grey, a field sprang into sight, extending between where we stood and the horizon.
Grey is West Sand's shallow tide, the granite face of Mount Mansfield, and Granda Mervin's hair, still thick. On my last flight to New York, it was a grey January morning, but as the plane lifted for takeoff, suddenly we were in a whole new landscape. I could see the Trossachs peeking through the cloud sea. From below, the sun was trapped behind a wall, but all it took was perseverance and a change in perspective.